We've seen how we can store values in variables and print them out. We've also looked at getting input from the keyboard in the previous section in this course. We'll now start getting Python to make decisions based on the values of variables and input. So just to quickly recap, I'm going to just type in a quick program. I'm going to delete the last 3 lines from the last video. I'm going to type name equals input, parentheses, and double quotes. Please enter your name, colon and a space there, and on line 2, age equals input, parentheses, double quotes again, how old are you, comma, space, then we want a left and right curly braces, replace with fields, 0 in the middle, question mark to the right of the right curly brace, and a space. Now closing double quote, dot, format, name, and the 2 right parentheses. Line 3, we're going to print out the value of age. So print parentheses age. Right, just as a quick recap to what we've done previously, I'm going to run that code now. And remember to click into the run window as I did before typing your name if you're using an IDE like IntelliJ. So I come down here and click on that. And I'll just move this down a little bit. I'm going to type in my name, enter. How old are you, Tim? I like to think I'm 21. Press enter. 21 is shown in the window. So note that we can use replacement fields in any string, including the one we're using, as a prompt to the input function. The input function returns a str or string data type. We have to convert it to an int if we want age to represent a number rather than the string. And we do that with the int function. So if we change line 2 slightly, instead of putting input parentheses, we'll put int, left parentheses, then right at the end, now we've done that, we need to go to the end of the line and add a right parentheses there to keep Python happy. So using int and input together like this is very common when you want to get a number from the user. It does have a serious problem though. Your code will crash if you type anything that can't be converted to an integer. Now we'll be looking at how to handle that later in the course. Until then, make sure you only enter valid numbers when our programs expect a number. Alright, so if we just run this to confirm, enter your name again, Tim. 25, we're getting the value of 25. And let's just quickly show what would happen if we do insist on typing something that's not a number. If I type in the text 20, you can see we've got an error there. And again, we'll talk about how to fix that later in the course. All right, at this point though, we've got a number. We saw that that was working, and we can make, at this point, some decisions based on the person's age. So let's start by checking if they're old enough to vote. In many countries, including Australia, the legal age for voting is 18. So let's come up and on line 5, type if space age is greater than an equal sign 18 colon, press enter. So we started with the keyword if and followed it with a condition. And here the condition is age greater than equal to 18. Now notice the colon that I placed on the end of that line. That means we're about to start a new code block. In fact, we did start a new code block when I pressed enter. And the IDE indented the next line for us automatically, as we've seen previously. The indentation is very important. That's how Python knows that we're starting a new block of code. All right, so if they're old enough to vote, we'll print out a suitable message. So let's do that on line 6. We'll put print, parentheses, double quotes, you're old enough to vote. Okay, so if the condition is true, in other words, the age entered is greater than or equal to 18, then we're printing out the message, you're old enough to vote. And I'll just press backspace there to remove the indentation. Let's run it. And we'll do it a few times just to make sure with different ages that it is working as expected. So if I start by typing 8 on my name firstly, then the age is 18. You're old enough to vote, so that's working. Tim, and I'll try 17. We get just the value 17. We don't get a message saying we're old enough to vote. And lastly, do one 50. Tim, 50. You're old enough to vote. And again, remember to type valid numbers or you'll get the error that I showed earlier in the video if you're not using a number. All right, so what we've done there in line 5, that's how to test a condition in Python. Keyword if followed by condition, in this case age greater than equal to 18. And finishing the first and finally ending the line with a colon. Now conditions can be a lot more complex than that, as we'll see. We know that a colon tells Python to expect a new code block, so line 6 is indented by 4 spaces. If age is less than 18, nothing happens, which is a bit unfriendly. We can cater for that by adding an else clause to our if keyword. Now, we don't want any more code inside the if block, which means we remove the indentation on the else line. So I've already done that. You saw me do that earlier, but we'll start typing on line 7, else, colon, press enter. Notice how IntelliJ has helpfully indented again. We'll type print, parentheses, double quotes. Please come back in, and we'll use a replacement field with a 0 in between the left and right curly braces, space years, double quote, comma, and we'll put format, parentheses, 18 minus age, and the 2 right closing parentheses. So if the person's age is greater than or equal to 18, the first block of code is executed. Otherwise, the second one is executed, asking them to come back when they're 18. Or more specifically, in a number of years, asking them to come back when they're 18. So I've run this a few times just to make sure that it works. Let's do that. Tim, 18, still get the same result, 18, you're old enough to vote. Tim, 50, you're old enough to vote, that's working. And we'll do one more this time if they're less than 18. Tim, we'll say 9. Please come back in, and we made a typo there. I'll put a comma there. Notice I put a comma there instead of a period, which is a subtle little bug. We'll do that. We didn't see that until we entered the value. So Tim, how old are you? 9. And there it is again. Please come back in 9 years, and that's because I entered the age of 9, and the calculation on line 18 was 18 minus what we entered, in this case 9. So it says come back in 9 years, when of course you'll be 18. All right, so as we saw in the last video, a block can contain several lines of code to execute. So let's go ahead and add something, a second line under line 6. So on line 7, I'm going to type print, parentheses, double quotes, please put an X in the box, and we'll close off the string and then right parentheses. Because lines 6 and 7 are in the same block, in other words, they're indented to the same level, we should find that both messages will be printed if the age is greater than or equal to 18. So let's just run that to confirm that is the case. Please enter your name, Tim, 19, you're old enough to vote, please put an X in the box. There's often several ways to do the same thing when programming. It may seem natural to deal with the voters first, but we can do that the other way around as well. So to see what I mean, I'm going to add some code, and we'll add that down here. We'll start on line 11, we'll leave line 10 blank. We're going to put if age is less than 18, colon, and let's just copy the line. Here we'll copy that line. Notice when you move the cursor down, it automatically moved over to the indentation level. I'm going to paste that. That's if the age is less than 18, else, colon, I'm going to grab the 2 lines up here. I'm going to paste those in as well. Notice that IntelliJ helpfully indents at the right line, or to the right indentation level. And again, we're doing things the other way around. We're not dealing with the voters first this time. We're dealing with people who in fact aren't old enough to vote first, and the people who are second, just to show you there's another way of doing the same thing. So if we run this, I'm going to enter the same thing twice now. So Tim, 15, please come back in 3 years, as you can see. We've got exactly the same output 2 times, and that's because we've got 2 conditions in there, 2 code blocks, if you will. So if I enter that again, Tim, 21, and you can see we've got the output again duplicated. Because effectively we've duplicated, we've got 2 ifs code blocks with the appropriate else clauses entered. So the code ultimately that I've added does exactly the same thing, but it's checking the condition the other way around. If the person is less than 18, we print the message asking them to come back. Otherwise, we print the 2 lines asking them to tick the box. So it doesn't matter which way round you phrase the conditions. Well, in this example, no, it doesn't. But in the next video, we'll see why it can matter. See you in the next video.